All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horrorheads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Uyua.
And we have been gone for a minute. The summer kept us super busy, but we are back now. And while Dave and I are teachers and the summer break is coming to an end, we know the hot weather is nowhere. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So we decided to cool off with this month. And we have decided that August is going to be the month of It Came from the Deep. We're going to be talking all scary movies that feature water creatures. And we're talking summer. What better place to start than the original summer blockbuster? The original reason that you could not go in the waves themselves. We are talking about Jaws today. And Dave, I know that since I have met you and Jeff, Jaws has always been a topic of conversation. I feel like you and Jeff have talked Jaws 100 times. So in a section that we're calling Here's Brucey, tell me why you love Jaws, man.
So to be clear, Jaws is definitely Jeff's favorite movie.
Right.
Like it's not even a question. I did set aside for today, and I figured I'd put it on while we were on this Jaws shirt.
Yeah.
So, listen, man, Jaws is one of those movies that growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was on all the time. And because this movie is rated PG, there's nothing that was ever edited out of this movie.
Right.
And the amazing thing about this time in cinema is that, I mean, most people don't think about this. There's no PG-13 rating at this time.
Right. PG, so everything that wasn't G or R was PG at this time period.
Exactly. And so there's things that today would probably get an R rating, and things that probably got an R rating back then that today would get something like a PG rating.
Right.
So it's an odd time. Jaws sits in this weird place where like everyone saw it because it was rated PG, and because all of our parents loved this movie when it came out, we watched this movie with our parents.
Right.
And it was one of those horror movies that I don't think is often thought of as a horror movie.
Yeah.
People think of this as an action movie. They think of it as a thriller, and it is those things, but it's a monster movie. 100%. And it's a fantastic monster movie. And it was one of the first horror movies that made me realize, like, I like horror. The first one, I've talked about this a lot. It's always going to be Night of the Living Dead. That was the one that turned me into a horror fan. But if any movie solidified me as a horror fan, it was Jaws, man. I mean, everything from the opening scene to the last line is just absolutely perfect. It's terrifying because no matter how many times I've seen this movie, it still gives me pause when I go to the beach. And I live in fucking Miami, dude. All right. And I'm not one of these Miami people that never goes to the fucking beach. I go to the beach at least a handful of times a year.
Right.
So I fucking love this movie, dude.
Yeah.
I'm not bearing the lead here.
Yeah, no. This movie is one that is it's so many things. There are so many names attached to this that you just the casual movie watcher at least recognizes. There are so many scenes from this that even if you've seen Jaws while you're watching it, you go, oh, right? Like you're doing that constantly because this is always popping up in any sort of, summer blockbuster hot reels, horror movie sizzle reels. It's always in all of these things. This movie is incredible because you're right. Now at 41 years old, I grew up. I don't live on the beach now.
To think that this movie's 41 years old.
No,
Because
I'm 41 years old. This movie's older than that. This is 75. This movie is almost 50.
Wow.
This movie is 49 years old. Damn. And but at 41 years of my life, I too still have those Jaws moments when I go to the beach. You're sitting there in the sand, especially once you get kids, so you're not just footloose and fancy free in the water. You're sitting, you're watching, you're making sure nobody drowns, and you see that one little
important and difficult work. The more Coronas you have,
and you always catch that one weird wave break that makes you go, wait a minute. Hey, just go over that way a little bit. Just go that way a little bit. And you know there's not a fucking great white shark over there. I say that, but the Alabama beaches, a girl from Alabama got an arm and a leg bitten off just this summer in the Gulf. So I say, there's no sharks out there, but you never know. That's the thing. Yeah, you never do know. And I think that is going to be a repeating theme throughout this month, is that idea that, there's numbers out there where it's like, we've explored more of space than the bottom of the ocean. There's just shit that we don't know about out there. And that's deep ocean. But when you're sitting on the beach, you can't see what's in 3 feet of water right there in front of you. And Jaws is a movie that constantly reminds you about that. Jaws is a movie that is not afraid to take out a child. It is not afraid to use a geyser of blood. It's not afraid to give us a little side boob with a silhouetted nipple and a PG rating.
Oh yeah.
You're right.
That's the first thing you see.
Yeah. You're absolutely right when you say this movie has everything. And this is one that's always kind of been in the back of my mind as one to do at some point in this podcast, because it is really just such a phenomenal movie. And it's interesting, since we missed some July time. So the last one we did was when I had Hunger on to do Tremors. And my intro to Tremors was talking about how many times I've seen this because it was on TV all the time. And Jaws falls right in that same category.
Yeah. And so, like, for that reason alone, I feel like Jaws has entered the public consciousness. Everyone has seen Jaws. Like, you and I were talking before we went on air, and I didn't even realize that my son has seen Jaws.
Yeah. Before we got on, listeners, before we get on, he's fussing at his son. He's like, "You've never even seen Jaws." And his son is like, "Yes, I have." You were like, "Oh yeah, that's right. You wouldn't go to the beach that summer."
Yeah, it's so this movie really is, I think, it's an important movie for cinema, but it's also an important movie for, like, society, especially for people our age and those of the generation just before us, maybe even more so for them, and definitely for horror.
Yeah,
definitely for horror. So as we keep moving forward, into the deep blue sea, let's start talking about the story, because I think that this has all of the makings of your classic monster movie. So in a section that we're going to call Amity Means Friendship After All, tell me, Daniel, what is it about this story that works for you? Or does it not work for you? Because it is possible. It is possible. We've just sat here and jerked off to this movie for the first 9 minutes, right? But it is possible that you think, hey, you know what? This movie ain't all that.
Yeah, no, this movie is all that. And every bit of the story works here because it's so plausible. Mm-hmm. Like, so last episode we're doing Tremors, and we lauded how they were able to take something so wild as a giant worm and make it seem like a scenario that felt real. Mm-hmm. Jaws is that times 100, because the closest you get to this movie being unbelievable is, well, why would a great white end up way up there? They give you just enough science for it to matter, and you go, yep, that checks. I'm good now. and that's it. So you've got a guy, he just became the chief of police in this new town. There's a shark attack. Mayor doesn't want to shut it down. No, the money, the people. And so it just keeps going. We eventually find out it is a great white shark, and terror ensues. Mm-hmm. what works so well about this movie is at no point did you ever say, well, that's just crazy. That's not how people act on the beach. That's just crazy. You know, people wouldn't do that. Hell, post 2020, you can't even go, that's just nuts. People wouldn't be that worried about money that they would refuse to shut things down as a matter of public safety. I mean, the 45 became the mayor of Amity during lockdown, you know, just constantly talking about how this was hurting everything, because that was his whole thing. It's like, no, we'll shut it down for 24 hours. Send them all out. Everybody go out and handle it on your own. We trust you, people. There's no part of this movie where you just say, that couldn't happen. This movie is it's scary because of that. It's terrifying because of how much you don't see.
Yeah.
This movie is terrifying because if you're watching a movie and you just constantly are seeing, like, you go, like, watch The Meg, right? And it's like, one, that's absurdly large. Two, you just always know it's there. It's not really sneaking up on anybody because it's so big. This movie is scary because you never know. The scene where Brody's sitting on the beach after the first shark attack, and every little thing's kind of making him jump, and he's nervous, but he can't say anything because it's not official that they're, you know, that's believable. The fact that some kids are really just going to rile everybody up with a cardboard fin, you know, these things, every bit of this movie, I can believe. Like, if you were to slap a based on a true story block before this movie, I don't think anybody would have questioned it.
I believe it was a fucking documentary.
Yes. And that's what makes it so scary. That's what this movie makes you realize, why sharks are apex predators. You know, we did Tremors, and we've talked kaiju on here before. Those things are apex predators because they're just bigger, stronger, and faster than all of us. And it doesn't matter if you know it's coming, but they're imaginary. Sharks are real. And this movie gives you just enough science to make you terrified of real life sharks. I'm not worried that the Cloverfield monster is going to stomp on Bryant-Denny Stadium this weekend and ruin football season, because he's not real. I am worried that next time I take my kids to the beach.
Well, Saban ruined football season for you anyway.
Hey, Kalen DeBoer could be something. He could be something.
Could.
Yeah. Could. Could is a strong word after these past 17 years. But, you know, this is a movie that, you know, because like I said, I grew up on the beach too. And you get blasé about it until you watch Jaws again. And then you're like, yeah, that shit's real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really hit on something that I think was not intentional when the movie was being made, but nonetheless ends up working insanely well, which is how much you don't see is just as scary as how much you do see. In fact, I think it's scarier.
Absolutely.
And you hit on one scene that is my absolute favorite scene in this movie, which is when Alex Kittner is right. Alex Kittner gets eaten, and it's horrifying.
Yes.
But everything that leads up to that is absolutely insane. It's some of the most tense moments in film history. And I think that nothing surpasses that as far as terror goes. I don't think anything surpasses that. There are things that do terror differently, but as far as mounting tension, fuck, dude, that is perfection. It is absolute perfection, because we've all been there, whether you are at a point in life like you and I, where we have kids, and you fucking hit the nail on the head, man. You hit everything that I feel about this movie. I'm at the beach, and what I'm looking at is, where's my kid? He's down that way. Okay, I'm all right. He's okay. He's playing football with those dudes. Fine. But where's the other one?
Right.
What's the other kid doing? Right. And then that's not my kid, but his parents aren't fucking watching him.
That's the one right there.
Yeah. It's who's watching that kid, right? And then the whole goddamn time, who's watching me, right? Because my parents are not there with me, right?
Who watches The Watchmen?
And I'm freaking the fuck out, right? So that sense of dread is present throughout the entire movie, because the movie opens up with this incredible scene where like all this shit is going down. No one cares.
Yeah.
No one cares. And it's amazing because every single one of the characters in this movie is someone I've met before.
Yes.
Every single one is someone I've met before. You know every single person in this movie. Maybe not by that name, but you know that person. And so it's incredibly frustrating because I want to reach into the screen and pull the mayor out and just slap him a little bit. Like, close the goddamn beaches, man. Just fucking close them.
Yeah.
Right? Fucking COVID. You talked about it, man. Just fucking shut shit down and stay the fuck home and wear a fucking mask for like 2 fucking weeks. We're fine. Did we do that? No. Look what fucking happened. Amity happened. All right.
Exactly.
Over and over again. We make these mistakes constantly. We continue to make these mistakes. And that's why this movie's so goddamn good. Because the story is nothing more than what happens in life when you can't control that thing over there.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is. And within that setting, it follows the classic Universal monster formula. People live their lives. Monster comes into town. People don't want to accept that there's a monster. There's some attack where people now have to accept that there's a monster. Pitchforks, torches. Get the fucking monster.
Yeah.
That classic, and that's exactly what happens here. And then there's always that one dude who's like, oh yeah, I can get you the fucking monster, but it's gonna cost you.
Yeah.
Right. There's always that guy. It's Dr. Pretorius, right? In Bride of Frankenstein. It's fucking Abraham Van Helsing in Dracula.
Yeah.
And we know it's fucking Quint here. And all the elements of your classic monster movie are here, because there's lots of people who've argued with me like, it's not a fucking monster movie. It's not a horror movie. Like, the fuck it isn't. Tell me why it isn't. Not tell me why it is, because there's lots of reasons why it is. Tell me why it isn't.
Yeah. If you don't believe that Jaws is a horror movie, then I want to see you be one of those people who will sit in a little inflatable tube and watch this thing, like it's a drive-in, even though you're in a river and it's still not even going to happen there. Those feet dangling in the water while you're watching this, you're done. It's scary. Yeah. And a lot of that fear comes from the tension that you were talking about. This movie is constantly building tension every single time. It's what's amazing is when you're watching when you're watching a slasher film, a lot of times it's just about getting from one kill to the next. And the good ones build tension. Monster movies are the same way. You're waiting for the next one, and then they keep you. It's that tantric movie thing, right? Where they keep you right on the verge. They just edge you until you have to see someone die. Like, it has to happen, or you're going to die yourself. And this movie is the blueprint for that. The idea of just constantly the red herrings of maybe nope, and you're always almost there, right? The tension that this movie builds is absolutely, it's phenomenal. Like, I've seen this movie plenty of times. Yesterday was the first time I've watched it in a good while, but I'm still because it's been just long enough that the timing wasn't always right in my head. So I was in on that tension as much as my girlfriend, who'd never seen it before, sitting next to me was. I knew who was going to die, but I didn't remember when they were going to die. So Alex Kittner hits the water and I'm like, shit, here it comes. And then those other people go, and then I start second guessing myself. I'm like, oh, wait, maybe it's that couple. Yeah. Wait, is it that couple over there? No, it is Kittner, right? And then it's like, oh, wait, is it that big dude that's just like floating on his back? And so then I start second guessing everything, because they show you the smorgasbord that is shallow water beach when there's a shark out there, and they perfectly give you the idea that this shark could get any one of them. You know, there's a shark out there. You know that girl died from a shark attack, regardless of what the mayor's telling everybody. And you know he's out there because that's about the time in this movie. And then when it was Alex Kittner, I was shocked again because I was like, oh, damn it, that's right. They do kill a little kid in this movie.
Yeah.
You know?
That's like the cardinal rule. You don't kill the kids. And yet they do.
Yeah. And like, oh man, I'll tell you, here's one that being a couple years removed from this movie will get you. When Hooper is down in the water trying to check out the bow of Ben Gardner's ship, and he sees where a boat, and he sees where the shark has bit the hole. And I was like, oh yeah. And he gets the tooth, and I'm like, yeah, look at that big ass tooth. Now he knows it's a great white. Then the fucking head comes through the hole.
You always forget.
Always. I got so close to pissing. It was a full blown jump, gasp, clench. Like I had to hit all three simultaneously to keep from staining the couch.
That is the mark of not great, of perfect filmmaking. Yeah. Because if I can see the same exact scene time and time again, I mean, I've seen this movie probably over 20 or 30 times in my entire life, right? If I can get so caught up in the tension that I forget that a whole fucking head pops out every goddamn time, that is a masterpiece.
Yeah. So I have a question for you as somebody who's seen this a bunch of times. And also, so there's a scene where it's nighttime. It's towards the end. I think they're on Quint's boat. Mm-hmm. And there's this shot where they're looking up at Brody, and this shooting star goes by in the background. Do you happen to know if that was a post effect or if they just happened to catch a shooting star? I couldn't find anything. I actually looked online today, and it's apparently something nobody talked about. I just wondered if it's something you've ever heard.
No, I'm pretty sure that was done in post.
Okay. I mean, and it had the look of a post effect, but I was like, I don't know, maybe it's Spielberg, right? Shit falls in his favor. You know,
it does. Like magic seems to happen,
right?
Whenever he's around. But no, I'm pretty sure that was like to kind of accentuate that sort of like, hey, we're alone. This is, some an almost dreamlike state. Like, they're in a sense, in a euphoria at that moment because like shit hasn't hit the fan yet. They're still riding that high. And I feel like that kind of accentuates that.
Yeah. And so I love that. But my favorite thing about the story of this, going back to what you can't see, is all the different ways that they constantly prove to us how big the shark is without showing us, right? We're talking bite radiuses. We see the giant tooth. Man, when they're just pumping him with the barrels and he's just dragging 3 of them and he can still go down underwater, and those barrels are huge. They are massive. If you ever, like me and most boys, I would assume, pushed a basketball underwater and been hit in the face with it, it's hard. And these barrels are the size of a grown-ass man would have fit in one of these barrels. And he's taken 3 of them underwater with him. They're constantly showing us without showing us how big the shark is. And that is true storytelling. By the time you see the shark at the end of this movie, even as big as it is, I guarantee you, if it's your first time seeing this movie, it's not even as big as you thought it was going to be in that moment. That's storytelling, right? The best storytellers are the ones who can hear a story and make it better. You live something. And then when you tell the story, you accentuate, you add little tidbits here and there that drive points home, because that's good storytelling. That's how you captivate people. The way that they have you thinking this shark is going to be some prehistoric beast, which sharks are.
Uh-huh.
But you're thinking it's a Loch Ness monster by the time you finally see this thing. That's amazing. And they constantly do it with just the little things like how far it is between fin and tip of the tail, right? And how quickly the blood is everywhere. And the fact that the first girl, her entire body fit in a Tupperware bin, like that was all like
all that was left. Yeah.
Every time he goes to do that second autopsy, he's like, "Where's the body?" And he just goes to a shelf and grabs a pink Tupperware bin. I'm like, man, that shark ate the shit out of her. Like, it's you're so engrossed in how big this thing is going to be that I'm not going to say it's disappointing when you finally see him at the end, because it's awesome. But if this is your first time seeing this, there's no way when he first pops up over the side of that boat that you're like, oh, he's bigger than I thought he'd be. No. They sold this thing as way bigger, and I love that.
And I think one of the big reasons why that scene works so much is because of perspective. It's not really because of how big Bruce is, but it's because we are totally not expecting it to happen. We're totally not expecting it to happen, and we don't even really see Bruce. It's actually the scene that, if you're watching live, it's the scene that's in the background right now.
Yeah.
He pops out. Bruce is not in focus. Bruce is in the background. And Brody, in fact, is still unsure if he has just seen what he thinks he's seen.
Yes. It's so good.
It's a perfect bit of filmmaking right there.
Oh my God. That's see, he sits up perfectly straight, cigarette in his mouth, and just walks backwards and just walks backwards, still staring straight forward. It's so good. Oh God, that scene is so amazing.
And I'm pretty sure that we've all had, like, missed it by that much experiences in life like that. I was once, we had rented a boat, and it started to storm, like really bad, right? There was lightning striking all around. We were hauling ass back to the marina so that we can, one, drop off that boat before that shit capsized, and number two, get in our cars and go the fuck home, right? We all got off the boat, and I sent the wife and kids to the car. I'm like, I'm going to go take care of this stuff. Like, you guys just, run to the car, do your thing. I had the dog with me, right? Storm.
Yeah.
And so she's with me. And once I'm done returning the boat, I bolt right to the car. The dog stops. And I had seen that there was no car crossing the street, right? But like, I'm going, like, I'm fucking running. Dog stops. Literally, had I taken one more step, I would have been struck by lightning.
Holy shit.
That fucking lightning struck the ground right in front of me. Everything fucking shook. All right? But my balls shook in my fucking bathing suit. All right? And I'm looking around, and I looked at Storm, and Storm looked up at me, and she was like, "You son of a bitch. You just almost fucking murdered me." And I'm looking at her. I'm like, "You just saved my goddamn life."
Wow.
Yeah, we've all had those experiences where, like, you don't know what the fuck to think at that moment. It was like, Did that just happen? Did it just happen? I don't know if it actually just happened. When you evade death like that, that's what it's like. That's 100% what it's like. And if you've never had a near-death experience, trust me, that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, they're all of those things just build this into something that, as we keep talking, we're eventually, I know that when we get to rating this thing, we're going to use the phrase greater than this, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. So let's get into another one of those parts in a section that we're calling Islanders and Foreigners. Ultimately, the story of this, you're right, is shot for shot just a monster movie, right? So what makes this different, what makes this better, are the characters. And do we have a colorful cast of characters here? So I'm going to throw this one to you first and let you get first pick. Who do you want to talk about?
Listen, there's not a single person in this movie who doesn't do a spectacular, stellar, perfect job. we only have so much time, and we're not going to be able to talk about them all. All right. So I think if there's one person that I think of when I think about this movie, I think most people would probably think of Roy Scheider as Chief Brody, and he is spectacular. I think a lot of people would probably think of Richard Dreyfuss as Hooper, and I truthfully think that's the right answer. But who do I think of? I think of Robert Shaw as Quint.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come into the movie until like halfway through the movie, for starters, right? At this point in his life, he was a drunk with like massive heart problems.
Oh, you're talking about the actor?
The actor Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
The actor Robert Shaw. He's pretty much playing himself. And when I had seen this movie, I already knew him as an actor. And I knew him mostly from James Bond. He had played Red Grant in From Russia with Love. So I knew him as a bad guy, right? And I saw his face and I'm like, oh, that's a fucking bad guy. But then little by little, I'm like, that's not a bad guy. Is that a bad guy? That is one of the most, I think, complex performances ever given on screen. Like, there is so much to this character. When he goes into the story of the USS Indianapolis.
Oh, my God.
Dude, I hold my breath every time, and I don't do it on purpose. But you could hear a pin drop. It doesn't matter who I'm watching this movie with, how many times we've seen this movie. That scene comes on. Everyone shuts the fuck up.
Yeah.
I've seen this movie in like straight up parties. Like we're all like drunk, having a great time on floaties and inflatable inner tubes in a pool. It's playing on a big screen. Everyone shuts the fuck up when that scene comes on.
Yeah.
That is masterful acting. He manages to do something that I don't think very many people have done in the history of cinema, which is he manages to be an asshole that you absolutely fall in love with.
Yeah.
Because he's not a good guy.
No.
A good person, a hero, would have gone to get the shark for free.
Yeah,
like,
because he loves his town.
Because he loves his town. That thing's a menace. It killed Alex Kittner. When is it going to kill again? I am going to do this because I need to do this, right? That's Brody. Brody's the hero. He's not a hero. He's a fucking bastard.
Yes.
He's a bastard, and I fucking love him. Every scene he steals, and he does it while never chewing up scenery. Everything is always just appropriate. Now, his character is a little eccentric, but he's never over the top. Nothing in this movie is ever over the top. And that's a movie about a giant fucking shark.
Yeah, exactly.
Never over the top. And you would think that the drunk Irishman is the guy who's going to be over the top. He's not.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this movie just kind of its place in the zeitgeist. People who have never seen Jaws know black like a doll's eyes. You know, like they know they've heard that, even if they have no idea where it's from. That's one that I believe I was watching a cartoon with my son one time, and somebody launched into that about a character or, you know, something that was happening. I believe it may have been on an episode of SpongeBob. I believe that we got the black like a doll's eyes monologue. That it has popped, and then top of my head, it also popped up in Always Sunny. I mean, that monologue, that again, like you're saying, and that's right in that same section where they're talking on the boat, the orca.
Yeah,
it's compelling, and you're so sucked in, and you're seeing every bit of pain that this man has, because he watched so many of his friends and you know, fellow sailors from the Indianapolis get eaten by these things, and it that one moment builds so much depth to, you're right, a character that's just a drunken bastard trying to get paid.
And literally moments before, they are having the greatest fucking time singing a sea shanty.
Oh, dude, yeah, like because I mean, Richard Dreyfuss is still laughing at being like, "Oh, what'd you have there, mother?" And he's still laughing when he launches into his Indianapolis story, and just out of focus, right there in the background, you just slowly watch him stop laughing and then they slowly zoom in a little bit more, and it's Quint time, and he's so good. And it's such another one, the scratching the nails down the board to get everybody's attention in the meeting. Every sitcom ever's done that at some point, right? I mean, these are things that people who have never seen Jaws are watching and going, again, oh, that thing, like it's so good that it is just part of the collective unconscious at this point. This has seeped into every bit of America that we have here in this. So you're right. Quint was an excellent place. And so, you know what, we'll save the two big ones, because I'm going to go here with I wanted to do an odd pick for the first one. And we're talking bastards. Can we talk about what a piece of shit the mayor is?
Thank you. Okay, so for me, there's 4 people that like you have to talk about them. He's one of them.
Yes, Mayor Larry Vaughn is such a huge human pile of dog shit, and it's so fucking funny and tragic. And he's everybody, like everybody has met this dude. Everybody has had this guy as a boss, right? Mayor Vaughn is the boss who oh man, it sucks that you got to go to a funeral, but did you get your shift covered? You know what? Fuck off.
Yes.
Right? He's that dude. And in this, man, watching him not care about the people, only care about his tourism numbers and how they're going to survive and all of this. The fact that he doesn't immediately take Quint up on getting this thing done, when this guy runs a business that is full of shark bones. If there's anyone that can do it, it's this guy who lives in a shack that is solely decorated with the jaws of sharks. I trust him. Sure. Here's $13,000, right? He is so shitty that not only does he not trust in the one guy who could do it, after days and days and days of not wanting to cause a panic, he immediately is like, nah, fuck it. Everybody with a gun and a boat, go get the shark. And it's like, but you just said you didn't want chaos and panic. And so even once he finally kind of gets his way with all that, the slimiest, shittiest fucking thing. I take it back. There's 2 super slimy, shitty fucking things. They're 1A and 1B. I'll start with 1B. 1B, the slimiest fucking thing he does is when he slides up behind that family and he's like, nobody's in the water.
Yeah.
Get your raft and go in the water. And then they go out there. Everybody goes out. All hell breaks loose. Piece of shit. But the absolute lead weight that is going to drag this dude straight to the 9th fucking circle is when Alex Kittner's mom confronts Brody.
Yeah.
And that scene fucking that scene gets me still. I have goosebumps talking about it right now. And she lifts up that black veil and she leans all the way into Brody about, you knew this could happen and now my son's not here and it's your fault. The fucking mayor is 2 feet from him. And Brody, because he's the hero, does not throw piece of shit mayor under the bus. And Mayor Vaughn, because he's the fucking villain, just stands there and lets Brody get berated and slapped and cut down to being 2 inches tall. Mayor Vaughn riles me up in ways that very few villains have. And it goes back to what we talked about in this story. This dude exists. There are so many Mayor Vaughns out there in the world. and you watch him do it, and you watch people die because he's such a piece of shit, and it irks me every single time.
There's you hit all of it. You hit all of it. There's, for me, one line in addition to those two moments, because those are the two best moments, I think, that kind of exemplify that. There's one line that, for me, in addition to those, stands out. And it's kind of that thing where, you know how, like, you're like, maybe this person really does believe that they're doing the right thing here, right? And maybe it's like, listen, you got to make a judgment call, and it was wrong, right? But this line always lets me know that he knew exactly what the fuck he was doing, and that he knew that he was making the wrong call for the people, but the right call for himself. When they catch that shark, it's not the right shark, right? But when they catch that shark, and Brody's like, well, let's cut this thing open, right? And he comes over to him, and like a fucking worm, he says, you're not going to do that here. And he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, what are you going to do? You're going to cut that out, and that Kittner boy is going to fall out. And it lets you know that, like, he has believed this entire time everything that he's been warned about, and he knows exactly what the fuck he's doing. What he's trying to do is not keep anyone safe. He doesn't fucking care about that.
Yeah.
What he cares about is public image. It's the only thing that he cares about. How am I going to get reelected? Which, you know, we always talk about how you have to judge a movie on itself, and you can't kind of look at the sequels or the prequels or anything like that. But I think one of the most realistic things about the Jaws franchise is that in Jaws 2, he's still mayor.
Yeah, good
the
point.
People re-elect Mayor Vaughn.
Yeah, they definitely do.
I can't explain it. I can't explain it.
Well, and you know, not only is it like a public image thing, but it's so diabolical because that was probably the one thing that you could have said that was going to stop Brody and Hooper from cutting open that shark right then and there. And he knew that. He knew that that was the one thing that he was going to say that was going to keep them from doing it. And so it was shitty because, yeah, it was him protecting his public image, but it was also just absolutely diabolical.
Yeah. Great. I actually, those were the two that I was like struggling. Like, which one am I going to pick? Is it going to be Mayor Vaughn or is it going to be Quint? Who am I going to pick first? So I'm
two
really,
very different sides of the bastard coin.
Yeah. Two very different sides. The other character I'm going to talk about is Richard Dreyfuss is Hooper.
Baby Richard Dreyfuss at 28.
Yeah.
You forget that Richard Dreyfuss ever was 28, really. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, he always had this sort of like matured look to him.
Yeah.
He always seemed like a dad.
Yes.
You know, he always had that look to him. And in fact, like, he looks younger, I think, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was the very next movie that he worked on with Steven Spielberg. Comes out in 1977 or 78, something like that. And he looks younger in that movie, and yet somehow, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how time works at all.
Circle.
I don't. Yeah, I wear a watch, and I have no idea how to tell time. So he speaks to me in this movie. I think I've spoken on the show a couple of times about how I never see myself reflected in the hero.
Right.
Like, I am Boromir in Lord of the Rings. Right. I'm the guy that, like, I'm gonna do the wrong thing for the right reasons, but it is gonna be the wrong fucking thing, and it's probably gonna get me killed. So I don't see myself as Chief Brody. I know that I'm not Chief Brody. I'm not the hero of the story. I'm the fucking nerd, though, who will drive the boat. because Hooper drives the boat, right? So I think that there's a very necessary role that needs to be played in this movie, because this movie is fantastical but grounded in reality.
Right.
Because all these things work because we're afraid of going in the water. And Hooper grounds the movie in the water. he grounds the movie in that really real fear of the water, of what is out there. And I think that most people, whether they think that way or not, see the movie through the lens of Hooper. And so it's a really important lens to see the movie through. And when he thinks that he knows everything and then finds out, no, I don't fucking know everything.
Right.
And I, in fact, like, have a lot to fucking learn here. He always is willing to learn. And that's one of the things that really I love about his character, is that he never receives new information and says, well, that's fucking impossible, because then he's the mayor.
Right.
And he's not the mayor. He takes that information. He says, okay, how the fuck are we going to approach this situation now? What are we going to do here? And I go back to that scene where Quint gives the monologue about the USS Indianapolis. He knows what the fuck is going on, and he stops and he listens, and he refuses to get chummy with them, because that's what they were trying to do.
I see what you did there.
Right? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. They were trying to have the good time because they were out fishing and they were hunting and, you know, all the manly stuff, and he stops that.
Yeah.
He knows this is not about me. This is not about us. This is about the sea. It's about respecting the ocean. It's about respecting what's out there, because we don't know what's out there. We think we do, but we don't.
Yeah, I love the character of Hooper, because Hooper you can watch this movie and you can see that, you know, this kid who was fortunate enough to get attached to something when he was young, and then it became his life, right? This is the kid who actually did grow up to become an astronaut, or dinosaurs did eventually become his life. You know, right. he fell in love. He fell in love with the concept of sharks early. And, you know, you occasionally talk about a character as the American dream, you know, because they pull themselves up by the bootstraps, whatever. Mm-hmm. Hooper's the American reality, which is, if your parents are rich, you can do shit like that. Right. You can fall in love with sharks at a young age and make that a career. But I love that that's a little tiny bit of his character, but they don't allow it to drive his character and him become somebody hateable. I really do love that it's really just kind of cast aside as a joke, and then you can move forward from there. I love the way that he doesn't ever really clash with Brody, because, you know, like, him and Brody go toe for toe, but they're always kind of in the right place. And but then when he interacts with Quint at the beginning, there is this really weird dynamic between them, because while they're both very good at what they do is so drastically different that finding middle ground takes them a while. And that builds a very good character. I really do love Hooper. I love the way that he, you know, when we don't even know what kind of shark it is, and it's a tiger shark, you know, and then he just moves on. Like, I knew it. I'm happy to help you. Let's go. And he, you know, the way he's always doing numbers, and the scene where he's like, look, based on the bite radius, it's 100 to 1 chance that with all the sharks that are out there, they got the one on their first time. And he goes, but then he sees it in Brody, that Brody needed this moment. And he kind of says, it might be. Yeah. I'm just telling you, I don't think it is. And we can't quit yet. And it shows something that a lot of times when we get these science characters, we don't get. You know, so often now a scientific character in a movie is just autism
totally
coded.
Unrelatable.
Yes. Yeah, they're just autism coded. Uh-huh. And we're just constantly just assaulted by these characters that are fucking Sheldon, right? And it's nice to see this guy who he knows his shit. He absolutely knows his shit, but he also has some humanity. He's not a robot, and he can see that Brody, even if it was just for 10 minutes before he changes his mind, Brody needed this moment. He needed a win right there to keep going. And Hooper gave him that win just in that moment. The next time we see him together, he's immediately convincing him that that's not the right shark when he pours that giant glass of wine. I laugh every time.
Yeah.
And then they go and they cut it open. They cut the shark open, couple of fish, license plate, and that's it. But that was after a while of not seeing this movie. That was something that was new and refreshing to me, was the idea that we used to have movies where characters weren't so two-dimensional. Characters weren't just one thing. That's the scientist. That's the jock. The cabin in the woods bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. Like which role do you fill? This movie goes back to, what if just people were being filmed? Right? And Hooper, while being a ridiculously rich guy who knows an absurd amount about sharks, he still just comes across as a person, which I think is really important. And I also think that the last person that we've got to talk about, which of course is Brody, is one of the ultimate everymans that you see in a movie. We are never led to believe that there is anything miraculous or special about Brody. Mm-hmm. He's just a dude who took a job at a place he was probably going to hate because he doesn't even like the water, and now he lives on an island.
He took it because it was quiet.
Yeah. He talks about he had to get out of New York. Mm-hmm. He's just a guy, man. He's a dad. He's a husband. But he also is the hero because he just took this job because it was quiet, but he wants the best for this town. And we see him grow and change. And we get, like, as we talked about the moment when he sees Bruce and sits straight up wide-eyed with the cigarette, we get that great moment. We get the amazing finale with him. But constantly throughout this movie, we're just seeing him as a guy faced with a bizarre circumstance. He's never excited about it. Quint's excited about it. He fucking hates sharks. Hooper's excited about it. He fucking loves sharks, right? Brody's not excited about any of this. He doesn't like sharks. He doesn't like water. He doesn't really seem to like Quint or Hooper, but they're necessary. He just wants to smoke and keep his quiet town quiet. That's all he wants out of life. Yeah. And just a shit storm fell down on him one day. And it was, what is the average Joe going to do about this? And we get that in Brody.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head. He is the reluctant hero. He doesn't want to be a hero. He moves to Amity specifically to get away from being the hero.
Right.
He never wanted to have a fucking gun.
Nope.
He just wants to keep the peace, to come home and be with his family. That's all he wants. And yet he's the guy who steps up.
Right.
He's the guy who's like, no, I'm going to get this fucking job done because the mayor's not going to fucking do it. The townspeople are not going to do it because they're all a bunch of fucking yahoos and they have no idea what the fuck they're doing.
Just throwing dynamite in the water, boats within 2 feet of where it lands.
What the fuck? It is, I think, pretty accurate to what most mobs end up looking like.
Yes.
With Silver Bullet, right? Mob goes out and they end up shooting just some dude.
Right.
Like that's exactly what these things end up devolving into. And that's exactly what he wants to stop. He doesn't want the madness to come to Amity. And he is, I think, the kind of guy that we all wish we were. We all wish we were Brody. We wish that we had the balls to chum the fucking water so that we can catch the damn fish.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't believe a mob like that would pop up, simple inflation calculator will tell you a $3,000 reward in 1975 is equivalent to about $18,000 right now. You can't convince me in a small town that every redneck with a boat and a gun wouldn't be out there doing the damn thing if somebody said 18 grand to whoever does it. So
shit, $3,000 in today's money.
Yeah, shit. Yeah, I would absolutely take $3,000 in today's money. But yeah, like I said, but you're talking 18 grand essentially. Yeah. Oh, all day. 18 grand drops in my lap right now. I'm clearing a lot of debt off the board. There's a lot of red out of my ledger with 18 grand suddenly appearing. Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So with all of that, right? Because we could keep going.
Right.
But we're not going to keep going, right? No, Kittner. Okay.
What you thinking?
Lee Fierro, Mrs. Kittner, she's fucking awesome. She's fucking fantastic.
Amazing.
Every scene she's in is amazing. Okay, now, we have to talk about it because we've been spending this whole episode kind of like swimming around this thing, right? It came from the deep. We've done this every month that we've been doing the Year of the Monster, right? As an aquatic monster, Bruce the shark. The thing that you see probably least of in this movie. How does it work for you?
Bruce is the blueprint. Bruce is the prototype. Bruce is the reason that we have the modern monster that we have. There are predecessors that Bruce stood on the shoulders of, at least one of which we are going to get to. Mm-hmm. But Bruce, there's a reason this is the original summer blockbuster. There is a reason that Bruce was a fixture of Universal Studios for so long.
Yep. There
is a reason that all of those things exist, and it's because Bruce is incredible. Bruce is 85% enigma, and that's what makes Bruce amazing. The legend, the shadow of Bruce is so much taller and so much longer than Bruce actually is. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes him amazing. That's why movies like this get sequels. And that's why in those sequels, you want to believe why the monster came back, why there's another one, how the slasher survived. Because the idea, right? It's Aristotle. There's two forms of a chair. There's the idea of a chair and the chair that you actually sit in. The idea of a great white shark that terrorizes a small town in New England is so much bigger than Bruce could ever be. And this movie builds that and sells that so amazingly. Yes, I'm very glad that we do eventually see Bruce and they tie a bow on this thing. But you probably could have got away without ever seeing Bruce, and his legend might have grown that much more, because we would always wonder, man, how fucking big was the shark that Brody blew up? How big does a shark have to be to drag those barrels underwater, to reroute this boat, to do all of these crazy things? Bruce being a legend in, like, not just like the legendary status idea, but a legend in the idea of this is what people think of when they think about sharks eating people in the water. Bruce becomes untouchable in that scenario.
This movie, I think, I say I think because I don't know for sure, but my knowledge of cinema is extensive, but it's not encyclopedic.
Right.
You know? My understanding is that monster movies before Jaws tended to kind of put the monster on display.
Right.
And you look at kind of like the prototype, which is the Universal monster movie. Those special effects, which were considerable and groundbreaking for their time, were on full display. It was the whole poster for the movie. It was like half the fucking billing for the movie, right? Like whether it was Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney, didn't matter. Like that was like they were pushing these things. You had big names attached to these monsters. And when the 40s and the 50s start coming in and you start getting more special effect heavy monsters, right? Movies like Tarantula, movies like Godzilla. In the 30s, you've got King Kong, right? These stop motion effects and these other sort of effects that they have, right? Were like picture in picture effects. These are groundbreaking effects and they are on full display. You watch any one of Ray Harryhausen's movies and those monsters are the fucking movie.
Right.
So what fucking changes? At what point do we start saying less is more? And it starts, as far as I know, so I don't want someone coming at me like, well, actually, there was a movie in 1963. Fuck you, man. All right. Just let me have this. All right. I think it starts with Jaws. And it's not, I mentioned this at the top, it is not intentional because they built a couple different Bruce monsters and they never worked the way that they were supposed to work. They never did. And you watch all the behind the scenes shit and you constantly see Steven Spielberg losing his goddamn mind because the shark's not fucking working. The shark's not working. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Why isn't it doing what it's supposed to do? Because as great as this movie is, he wasn't working with the biggest budget. This was his first big budget movie. He'd done 2 movies before this, exactly 2 movies, Sugarland Express and Duel. And neither one of those got like theater releases. These were made for TV films. Sugarland Express might have gotten a limited release. I'm not 100% certain on that. But wow, dude, this thing for a first-time director, and it doesn't fucking work. How do I fix this fucking thing? I can't. So what do? I'm just going to hide the fucking monster. Yeah. I'm going to hide the monster, and I'm going to lean into the fucking tension. And if you've ever read the book by Peter Benchley, tension is what it's all about. But what this movie does better than the book is that you're not just in the head of one character. You're seeing that tension rise from this third person, omniscient perspective. And we are feeling the tension. It's not the character. The character's feeling it, but we are feeling the tension as that third person omniscient fucking narrator. It's insane what was done with this shark. I'm so glad it didn't work because had it worked, it literally would have changed not just this movie, but the way monster movies are presented.
Yeah.
Because you fast forward just a couple of years, Empire Strikes Back. Why does the scene with the fucking Wampa work so damn well? Because you don't see the fucking Wampa.
Yeah.
You see an arm, you see you see a mouth with like a couple of like fucking teeth, you see a foot, you never see the whole fucking Wampa. You never do. And that's why that scene works so well. Think about how many monster movies came after where you don't see the whole monster ever, the entire movie. Cloverfield is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right? You mentioned Cloverfield at the top. When do you see all of fucking Cloverfield? You don't. You don't see it. I don't know what the fuck the monster's called.
I just call him Cloverfield.
I just call him Cloverfield, right? Even Godzilla's for the United States start to change, right? Because you look at that MonsterVerse stuff, and that first Godzilla movie, the Gareth Edwards one, you hardly ever see all of Godzilla. You see a leg, you see its fucking gigantic tail, you see its eyeball. How often do you see the whole creature? You rarely do. Now with these ones where we're starting to get the kaiju fights, it's going back to that old Japanese style of like it's about the fucking monsters and all that. But man, this movie changes the way that we approach monsters today. It's monumental the way that this monster is used. It strikes fear in you, not with itself, but like you said, the idea. When you've been walking all day, do you want to sit in a chair? Yeah, you do. But before you're sitting in that chair, you know what feels really great?
When you're getting close to that chair, and you're thinking about it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that when I finish like an 18-hour shift at the bar on a game day and I'm driving home and my feet are hurting, thinking about getting my boots off and getting into bed is possibly more orgasmic than when I actually get my boots off and get into bed. So you've given us a perfect segue here into getting into another section. We don't always do this one, but when we do a Spielberg or somebody like that, we've got to talk filmmaking and blockbusting, right? We've got to give flowers to just more than just the monster of what was accomplished here. But so many shots and things are established in this movie. We kept talking about the tension. Tension comes from great filmmaking. So, I mean, let's talk about Spielberg and what he did here.
Listen, man, I mean, this movie is perfection. And when you start thinking of the fact that it's really not, because so many things went wrong, you have to start wondering, so what is it that makes it work? And it always goes back to the same thing. It's Spielberg, man, because he's not working with the same cinematographer that he would end up like establishing himself with, but he is working with John Williams, who's helping that movie out. And John Williams, to my knowledge, had scored a couple of movies, but really what he was doing was he was a jazz composer. And Spielberg is like, that's the guy. And I want you to do an old school Hollywood score. That wasn't being done anymore. And part of that is the fact that Spielberg approached this movie as a classic monster movie. It was even Universal Studios. Like, that's what he's thinking when he's going into this, is like, it's Universal Studios. Are we bringing back the monster movie? Like, let's do that. Let's bring it back. Because if you look at what had been going on, this movie comes out in 1975.
Right.
So it's being made in 74. What movie before this in the 70s has a score? I can't think of a single fucking one.
Right.
They had all become soundtracks. It was that sort of like jukebox thing where it's like, hey, you know, this is big and this is big and this is big. These are bands on the radio. Let's put them in the movie. And so even something like that, making a decision to do a traditional score, to go back to like fucking Casablanca, that was revolutionary. To go back to basics was revolutionary. And his approach in filmmaking was definitely not back to basics, because you look at like some of the decisions that he makes for like camera movements, and these are things that like don't happen often. Like it's auteur stuff. I think that this movie has the greatest camera movement of all time, which is the dolly zoom. And it's done to such incredible effect. It's like when you don't have to know anything about filmmaking or the way cameras and focal lengths and stuff like that work, but you can watch that scene where the camera is zooming into Brody's face and the background is just melting around him, and you know that some shit's happening there. And after that dolly zoom, we start seeing the dolly zoom appear so much more often. And it's not a traditional camera movement, because most filmmakers don't even use those kinds of lenses. You need to use a zoom lens for that. It's incredibly difficult to do. I've tried doing it with my film club guys at the school that I teach at. We can't fucking do it. It's impossible. It's impossible to do it unless you're a god. Right. And again, he's not the cinematographer, he's the director, but he's telling the guy, fucking do this.
Yeah.
Because this is going to work. It's going to fucking work. And it fucking works. Every decision that he made for this movie was the right damn decision. Even when that decision is covering up the fact that the movie's not working the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, it's funny. Like you mentioned John Williams.
Yeah.
So as I was watching this, I'm sitting here, and occasionally I just have no idea how old someone is. Right.
Mhm.
There are moments in my life where I'm like, I don't know how old they are. So I'm watching this last night and I'm like, I wonder if this is what, like put John Williams on the map, and so you go back. This dude has been scoring shit since the 50s and
Yeah.
is still alive.
Mhm.
It's wild as shit. Like you go through, he scored a couple episodes of Lost in Space. He scored Valley of the Dolls. He scored Sugarland Express. It was the first time that he worked with Steven Spielberg.
Uh-huh.
And so I went, and then I immediately was like, is this guy still alive? He is still alive.
Yeah.
John Williams still very much still with us. He is 92 years fun. So
and by the way, was scoring movies up until recently because he scored the last Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
He said, I'm out after this one. So he is, I believe, officially retired until, who knows?
Yeah, I mean this guy is he's the Alexander Hamilton of scoring, right? He's nonstop. Like
Yes.
it's absolutely incredible. And yeah, according to his IMDb, Dial of Destiny is the last one that he did. So that was just nuts. I mean, and it's you anytime you walk away from a movie with a sound bite that's constantly kind of banging in your head, and you with your all that, the John Carpenter stuff, everybody knows. Everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And so incredible feat there. I immediately was like, Dave's going to remember what this thing's called. So if he doesn't bring it up, I'm going to be like, hey, what's that zoom shot on Brody called?
Yep.
But you brought it up already, right?
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one that's in like every sizzle reel ever. It's that one and the straight up cigarette comedy moment. Those are the two ones that are in every classic American cinema sizzle reel that has ever been made. And rightfully so. They're both amazing shots. We spend all the time talking about how great the characters did. And then you've got to remember there's a guy on the other side of the camera who's constantly being like, hey, do it again, but do it like this.
Mm-hmm.
Do it just like that, but tweak this one word. And so whenever we talk about a movie where every character we could devote 15, 20 minutes to, we've got to do the other part to talk about the director who got those performances out of them. This movie is, there are so many things to think about when you think about Steven Spielberg. I mean, but the two that I always go to are Jaws and E.T.
Yeah.
When somebody talks about Spielberg, like I hear Spielberg, those are the two thoughts that pop into my head. The guys, it takes square footage to list the guy's filmography at this point and what he's had his hands in. But those are the two I go to because he constantly creates social movements. Like this guy supplants his movies in the American culture. And to go back and to watch this one now and still see that it's just as good. $9 million budget. This thing makes $500 million worldwide. Mm-hmm. That's absurd. No wonder everybody let him make whatever the fuck he wanted for the rest of his career. Those are stupid numbers. And so it's so cool to go back. And yeah, like you said, he had two before, but to go back and see his major directorial debut and be like, this guy's been shitting gold since 75
from the beginning.
Yeah. Like since he started. And so it's amazing. It's amazing what he did. It's amazing how he pulled all of this together.
And beyond what he did, like behind the camera, the way that, and a lot of this goes to Universal for this, The marketing for this movie was it changed the game. The term blockbuster starts here.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a blockbuster picture before this, because literally people were lining up around the block to see this movie.
Yeah.
You could not play it in enough theaters. There was no, and it wasn't just that. These days, like, movies come out in theaters, and then a couple of weeks later, they're streaming already, right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if next week Deadpool and Wolverine was already streaming on Disney Plus.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I want it to make all the fucking money. Right? Not just because it's fantastic, but because I want to see cinema become what it was once upon a time. And I know that's not going to happen. But the idea that, like, okay, I don't know when this movie is going to be pulled from theaters, and I don't know when it's going to play again. People were going to rewatch this movie and rewatch this movie. It was the same as when, like, today you sit in front of your TV and you're like, oh man, you know what? I want to rewatch that episode of House of the Dragons. And then, like, or you have a watch party. You're like,
yeah,
hey, let's all get together and watch the Walking Dead or some shit, right? That's what this was. And it started with this. Because before, people would watch movies, the movie would go away. Maybe you'd see it once, twice more than that initial time, but that was it. And then if you were lucky enough to, like, have the movie be brought back, something like a Gone with the Wind that comes back every couple of years, then you were lucky. But you didn't know when that was going to happen.
Right.
People were lining up literally around the block to watch this movie again and again and again and again because they couldn't get enough of it. And a lot of that is Universal, but it's Spielberg, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we talked about, where I was willing to believe that a shooting star just happened to fly by when he was shooting because the guy makes magic. So,
yeah.
I mean,
we did get a comment before we go into ratings. Greg, longtime listener, often commenter, says, crazy busy night tonight, but just had to check in to say that I listened to the Event Horizon episode on my commute tonight, and how he corrects himself. David's story about his son is my hell too. Thanks for that. I don't remember what that story was.
Dave's gonna go back and re-listen to Event Horizon, but we appreciate you listening.
But I'm sorry that you connected with me on that, because whatever it was, if it was about Event Horizon, it was not pleasant.
It was not pleasant. All right, so I mean, that's it for Jaws, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about it. It's time that we rate this thing. So if you're new to the show, or you just might have forgotten because we've been gone a couple weeks, here at Shiver, we never rate a movie against other movies. We've talked about plenty of Spielberg's other stuff, what other these actors have done, but it's just not fair to the movie. So whenever we create a movie here on Shiver, we create a unique rating system. And for this one, you know, I will say, for going through this whole episode, we've done so with only dropping a very small number of the quotes that get brought up on this. We have made it through this entire episode without saying we're going to need a bigger boat. So you might have been thinking that's where we were leading you, right? That it's going to be out of 5 bigger boats, but no. We're going to do you one better than that with another quote that we've made it this far without saying. So Dave, out of a possible 5 smiles, you son of a bitch, what do you give Jaws?
Listen, I mean, it's 6 out of 5. This is the gold star. This is 6 smiles, you son of a bitch, out of 5 smiles, you son of a bitch. I mean, it is a perfect movie, even in its imperfections. And the only imperfections it has is the fact that the shark malfunctioned and it was better for it. I mean, if that's not movie magic, I don't know what is. This is the perfect summer movie. Whether you're starting your summer with this and you want to ruin beaches for you for the whole summer season, or you're ending summer with it and you want to try to drink to forget.
Right.
That,
I'm watching,
could have happened to me.
I'm watching it now with school starting. I'm like, you know what? Fuck beaches. I'm glad school's back, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, I've seen this movie, I said maybe 20 or 30 times in my life. I'm not exactly sure how many times. And I am certain that before I die, should I live a life, nice and long, I will watch it another 20 or 30 times before I die.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add. It's absolutely 6 out of 5 smiles, you son of a bitch. There was no question. As soon as we opened this, everybody knew where this one was going. But so that's unanimous. It's 6 out of 5. And we appreciate everybody who hung around all this time to just listen to us gush about Jaws, even though you knew what we were going to rate it as soon as this thing started.
Yeah.
But we are definitely back. We are now building into It Came from the Deep Water Monster Month. Mm-hmm. We're trying to hit a couple of very different notes as we move forward here. We're starting on a very high note. Mm-hmm. And this scatter plot's going to get weird for the next 4 weeks, right? So make sure you follow us on Instagram at ShiverPod. We're also Facebook and Twitter at those places. I know it's been kind of dormant here lately. I've had a lot going on with the end of summer, but I'm back in routine as of 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. So it will be back. There will be daily posts. Thank you to everybody who comments, who likes, who shares. We did, they don't pop up on our live feed, but as we were going through this on our Instagram live feed, Carl Grasso, friend of the show, says this is his favorite movie. Neary would just like us to know that he wants to say Mayor Vaughn, best mayor ever. And Talented Baby Ripley, which is somebody who does trivia with Hunger and I here, says that this was John Williams' contribution of a 2-note villain. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, wonderful comments. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for hanging around. Thank you for everything you're doing. And make sure you follow us so you know what's coming up next, because Water Monsters is going to get weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to get calmer before it gets crazier.
Right.
Because there's always a calm before the storm. It's nice when you look out on the water and everything is nice and smooth and placid. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.